The Grand Experiment by Brendan Bozeman. Teddy was 5 when something important, but till then, vague, hazy, and only obliquely perceived, snapped into reality. It happened on a fall afternoon when his father smacked someone's hat to the ground. It was the recognition that his father was not the Apollonian exemplar of circumspection that he had assumed him to be, but rather a person just as real and odd as everyone else. It was a realization we all come to with figures of authority or wisdom at some point, but in Teddy's case, it was on that day that he inferred that this was a habit of his father's. He would precipitately knock people's hats off. If there was no hat, he would knock down a book or a cell phone, or he would jab his index finger aggressively into the person's shoulder, or even flick their forehead. Teddy could form no theory as to why he did this. There would be conversation, and then the explosive action. On this day, he had assaulted, legally, these were assaults, someone wearing his favorite object of violence, a hat, and the indignant reaction of the victim focused Teddy's attention. The person said, "Well, you asked a question." Teddy said right then and there, "Why do you do that, Daddy, if it makes people mad?" His father's response was to huff, seize his hand, and say, "You're going to be one of them too, aren't you?" And then drag young Teddy so abruptly that his ice cream fell to the ground and he started crying. This taught him to keep quiet about it for 3 full years, but at 8, he still wondered what was going on, and he chose to ask again at a dinner party when his father was in conversation with someone from work. "Daddy, why do you knock people's hats off when you talk to them?" His father said, "Knock people's hats off? What do you mean? I don't knock people's hats off." Teddy was too confused to challenge him, but the fact that his father lied about it only piqued his interest, and he asked again after the party. His father sighed deeply and said, "I'll tell you later." This didn't satisfy Teddy, but he was not of an age to challenge his father further, so again he let it go, and nothing like the subject came up for another several years when Teddy was in the 6th grade. Of course, Teddy didn't brood over it all that time. He was too busy having a normal and otherwise undisturbed childhood. But the question reasserted itself yet again in a tranquil evening of completing his homework. Teddy rarely asked for homework help, but 6th grade science was getting a little harder with the labs, and he was stumped. "Dad, can you help me with this lab report for Miss Carr?" he asked, approaching his father where he sat on a deep leather couch watching TV. "I don't get what the control variable should be. We're adding baking soda to—" "Science, is it?" said his father, leaping to his feet, as if preparing to rebuff some great insult. "Another one of these science teachers. I'll show her. Give me that lab." He angrily went through the paper and told Teddy what control variables were and what they could be, and then you didn't always know what it was in a particular experiment because, of course, it's a matter of opinion. This is where he took on a very mocking tone of voice. "After all, a control variable could be temperature or pressure or the smell of the dog shit on your shoe. And no matter what you put, your teacher will probably just put 'be more specific' in capital letters and underline it and hand it back." Teddy was dumbfounded and slightly afraid. "Dad, what's the deal? You don't even know her." "She's a science teacher, that's what I know." "Is this why you knock people's hats off?" "Ha ha," he said, pointing up and smiling maniacally, as if Dr. Moriarty were giving Sherlock Holmes due credit for some astonishing deduction. Maybe it is. Dad, and please this time just tell me why you do that, okay? Just a straight answer. No fobbing me off. Now, that's a little fresh. How old do you think you are, anyway? Teddy hardened his resolve. Straight answers. Okay, Teddy, straight answers. You better sit down. I think you'll find that my hostility is not so ill-placed once you've heard everything. His father stared at him, waiting. Teddy had not realized his father wanted him literally to sit down. Widening his eyes and weaving his head back and forth slightly, Teddy sat on the sofa. Now, have you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Oh, my God, said Teddy with exasperation. No, I promise. This is relevant. No, I have not read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the... Okay, it's science fiction. But there is one prediction, or at least one plot point, that was almost perfectly correct. The main character finds out that the Earth is really a huge computer being used to find the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And that is true in this way. Theoretically, we could calculate everything that has ever happened in the universe or ever will. But there is a catch. There is too much information to be calculated by any computer external to that system. The system in question being the universe. It simply defies the laws of thermodynamics. And if you factor in chaos and particle decay, you can see that the enterprise is hopeless. There is only one way to execute such a stupendous algorithm, which is to have a universe that calculates itself. So the universe would calculate what the universe does? Yes. But since it takes a whole universe to do it, and since it would take just as long as the universe existed to perform the calculation, the universe is its own computer. We can't have an answer without just running the entire routine from start to finish in real time. It blurs the line between a computer and a simulator. Said Teddy, intrigued but not intrigued enough to forget his original question. But Dad, you're off topic. Why do you... I'm telling you that. One day, your mother and I were out for a long walk in the woods and got lost. Oh, Jesus, forget it, said Teddy, moving to stand up. But his dad put his hand on Teddy's shoulder to hold him in his seat. This was way back before cell phones, so when you got lost, you were just lost. No Google Maps, no 911. Dad, I know. It started getting dark, and we had resigned ourselves to sticking it out overnight because we didn't have flashlights and didn't want to hike in the dark. Well, just about the time we were finally getting to sleep, huddled in each other's arms for warmth, something magical happened. That's when I was conceived. Teddy, I think of you as a smart boy, not a smart ass. This all kind of uncalled for insult rather shocked Teddy. His father was not wont to insult him, nor was he wont to swear, and this was the second swear of the night. No, that's not where you were conceived on some freezing hillside in the middle of nowhere. That's when we saw a UFO come down and park in a small clearing nearby. What? Shh. I snuck up on it, and while the aliens were walking around, I said hello. A beam of light shone on us immediately, and we were transported to their spaceship and questioned. Seriously? They had these little translators that looked like the cell phones of today. Mostly, they wanted to know how we had snuck up on them, and we had no answer because they had snuck up on us. I asked why they were there, and for some reason they answered. These egghead aliens were having some of the same problems with their climate that we are. So they wanted to make an Earth simulator / computer to find out how things would come out. In fact, they made several. Did it work? Not really. The planets did not exactly match theirs, of course. And even though they were smaller and supposedly would run faster as an algorithm than reality, they were only good for short-term weather forecasts. Their long-term development strayed too far from that of their planet, so they terminated the experiment. Ironically, I don't think they set up a control planet, although they were careful about control variables. But they come back every 10,000 years or so to see if anything interesting is going on. This sounds made up. You're always talking about climate change this and climate change that. What about the hats? Teddy's father ignored him. You know how I have always been into alternative energy sources, wind, solar, etc. It would sure be useful for planning to ask them about their data. First of all, what changes can we expect in the next 50 years? I thought they must have been able to make some accurate predictions for that time frame. But it was about then that I started thinking that this alien wasn't really on the up and up, for lack of a better term. What do you mean? He seemed to want to get going, like he wasn't really supposed to be there. The other aliens were moving around fast, and I thought to myself, how is it that he didn't know we were here? Why is he answering my questions? Wouldn't a normal alien just say something cryptic like, you all need to work together? It all seemed very strange to me. So I thought I'd better get in a couple of key questions while I could. I asked him, are we having global warming here? And if so, how much? This alien thought for a moment and said, and I quote his exact words, you know, your question is interesting on a couple of levels. First of all, when this plan was first developed, there were problems with... And then he went on like that for like 10, 15 minutes about all kinds of details about the climate and how they made their predictions. He was very long-winded and kept bringing up side issues and caveats, and he kept redefining his terms and forgetting unimportant details that for some reason he would be determined to figure out, like the exact weight of the oceans. But finally, he was ready to give the answer. I mean, he was almost there. He said, so your answer is... But then he got cut off by one of his men, who kind of discreetly sidled up to him and let out a bunch of squeaks and growls. And then he suddenly said, sorry, we have to go. 2 of his men grabbed us and threw me and your future mom back out of the ship, and they were gone as fast as they had appeared. Teddy's father stopped, apparently consumed in a reverie of dismay. What are you trying to say, Dad? If that damn alien had just given me a straight answer, we'd be rich by now. Instead, he starts off on this long diatribe. All he had to say was yes or no, and maybe 0.5 degrees in 30 years. That's all. Even those little bits of information would have made me the best investor on Wall Street. Teddy wasn't sure what to say. But why do you knock people's hats off? I noticed that science teachers always never give an answer to your question. Do they ever just give you a straight answer? No. They always have to go off on some huge tangent and tell you about all the considerations from every possible angle with a whole lot of it depends and only if and as far as we know, instead of just saying something like it gets bigger or it rusts or 15 minutes. So now whenever I hear a science type start in, my blood boils, that old grudge comes up, and I am compelled. His father collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and despondent. Teddy was shocked that his dad had harbored so much anger for so long. I'm sorry, Teddy. It's not a good example to set. But he blew a whole lifetime of wealth and fame with his blah, blah, blah. I'll try to do better. Don't worry about it, Dad. We have fine lives. I mean, even if we're not rich and famous, I'm still happy. They had dinner, and his father's mood improved. He and Teddy's mother told him more about the ship and what the aliens looked like, what their language sounded like, and what they wore. They discussed what may have happened to the other Earth simulators, why they had never come forward with their story, and so on. Teddy went up to bed late, his head swimming with all the new information. He was drifting off, thinking about those aliens and his science teachers. It was true. They never really gave a straight answer. But he decided there and then not to hold it against them. It's just the way they are, he thought. He was almost asleep when he sat up suddenly. His father had never told him what the control variable was. He had told him a lot about control variables, but then he had gone off on a tangent about aliens and old grudges. He never just gave him a straight answer for what it was in that experiment. He threw his bedclothes back so he could go confront his father. It was going to be hilarious. Then, thinking of his father sitting on that deep couch, he decided to just keep it to himself. He went to his desk, took a guess at the control variable, scribbled out a body paragraph, and got back into bed. As he tried to sleep again, his mind wandered to the poor people whose hats got knocked off. Then he had a new idea. He would play just a small little joke. He would go to his father and say, "Dad, you said why you knocked people's hats off, but you never actually said why you knocked the hats off those exact people. Be more specific." He paused, then lay down again, this time for certain.